Does it? Very good. 5 minutes later, we're finally live.
We're good.
Okay, my name is Kirk, and I've put this little seminar together about calendars that I've been writing since 2013. I got introduced to Almanac and rhythms and cycles by an author, Johanna Paugner. She used to live in Tyrol in Austria, and now I think she lives in the United States. She wrote a lot of books over the last 30 years, and one of my friends 20 some years ago gave me a book. It ended up in the bookshelf. I never took it out till we started a garden, and I didn't have a clue about gardening. I said, well, let's just look at it. It's called Gardening by the Moon. Yeah. So I took the book out and read it, and it was so much more than just gardening. So much more comprehensive about everything from our health, from our other rhythms that are influenced by nature. And I got very interested in it, and I had her calendars all the time. So, and in 2013, I started writing my own for this area with Mountain Time, well, the things in Mountain Time and in English, and more, a bit different from hers, but the base knowledge comes from those books. And then, of course, since 13, experience and watching and observing and being awed by how nature presents its rhythms to us. I would like to introduce my participants here in the seminar. I've introduced myself, and there's Carol, and she's joining us today. And nope, that's Carol. Oh, yeah, camera. Yeah. And Dan. And Ingrid. Okay. I'm so glad you're here, because I would have screwed that up really bad. Anyway, so this is what the new calendar looks from the front. That's the wall calendar. And on the back, it has all the pictures and all little things in there. And every month is listed as a whole month from the first to the last. So, and it's easy to see on those calendars where the waxing moon phase is, and the waning moon, where the full moons are, the new moons are. And then when I had space underneath, I added some contribution on what the original holidays, pagan holidays or our holidays, where they came from and what they meant. Very short and very brief, of course, but it was interesting, fascinating to get into those subjects where the names for our days come from, and it's all way older than we think. Anyway, so this is and then the calendar is laced with pictures from and around the Black Hills. I am fortunate to have some pictures from a renowned photographer from Rapid City, Mike Walford, and he allows me to use some of his amazing photographs in my calendars. So that's the wall calendar. And then we also have I also make a pocket calendar, because I run around with this thing all the time. And the pocket calendar is structured in weeks. 1 week starting at Monday per page, and then a lot of extra room for notes. And the pocket calendar has the same information as the wall calendar. All the symbols are, I need to take my note out, are explained in the front. Every symbol that's mentioned in the calendar is explained in the front. And in the wall calendar, some extra stuff that isn't really in rhythms, but is still worthy knowing when the favorable days are and when not. Kind of like when to go to the dentist and all these kind of things. In the wall calendar, when you hang this thing up on the wall, The legends are in the back on the last page. So all you have to do is, when it's hanging on your wall, flip back and look at all the symbols. Nobody can remember all of that. And sometimes it's amazing what we think we remember, and then we read it and it's something else. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So let's see. This knowledge about calendars, about solar, about lunar rhythms, about zodiac rhythms, about rhythms on this planet is of course nothing new. We're all living by rhythms, whether we know it, whether we realize it or not. Simple thing is, we're active during the day and we're going to sleep at night. It's one of those rhythms. We're having seasons, spring, summer, fall, and winter in most parts of the earth. In every part, the seasons are different and are varied, and people adjust to those different rhythms. So we do live with rhythms altogether, but there's so much more to rhythms that are handy and helpful than we in general understand. One of the things in the last 200 years probably, or a little bit more, these rhythms got lost for the majority of the people. The ones that live on the countryside and are working with the earth are still, of course, far more involved in it. But even there, some of the understanding where those rhythms come from is lost. And I remember somebody telling me, yes, we always put the potatoes in on Good Friday. And why? Well, I don't know. That's always how I did it. So here's why. Because Good Friday is Easter's always is the first Sunday after the spring equinox. Is it equinox? The spring equinox? No, yeah, solstice. Spring equinox. Solstice? Yeah. No, spring equinox. After the spring equinox. So it may anywhere be from March through April, depending on when this first Sunday is after the spring equinox. And Good Friday is always the Friday before. So it's always before a full moon. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it's the right day. It doesn't mean that the other things don't go together. It doesn't mean that it's always in the waxing moon. Yes, that is that. But it could be the wrong zodiac sign. It could be the wrong timing. It could be a snow blizzard. Who is going to plant potatoes in a blizzard? So it is really something that the understanding why this is on sit is lost, because that Good Friday thing came from Europe, where usually on Good Friday you had already really good weather, and it was the first plant that you could plant in when the soil was defrosted. Here we have frost all the way through May. There's no way you can put potatoes in the ground, or I wouldn't anyways. So it's important to know why those things happen. And when we look at how this calendar is, there's some certain basic rules that govern our moon cycles. The moon cycle is always 28 days, 14 days in the waning moon, 14 days in the waxing moon. The old pagan calendars had 13 months to the year according to the moon, because we have 13 full moons per year. And then the calendar was changed to 12 months to kind of put a little bit of monkey wrench in there. The basic rule for anything is that during the waning moon, Earth takes in energy, and animals and people which are animals, exert energy. So we are the ones that giving energy. We're more active in that time. We're more likely to do things. We're more likely to go out. We're more likely to tackle tough challenges, physically tough challenges, while the earth takes in. So that's the time when we give to earth. We give nutrients. We give water. We give the soil our energy. It's an exchange of energy. And in the waxing moon, it's the opposite. Earth gives, and we take it. Earth expands. So this is also the time when we can harvest things, when we are when we collect herbs and medical things from nature. The waxing moon is usually the more giving, because the energy is rising in the plants instead of going into the earth, and we're taking in. So we are absorbing energy. We are absorbing good things. We're absorbing nutrients. That's the time when we gain weight, or but we also absorb all sorts of other things. It's because absorbing is neutral. So if we hover over negative things in the waxing moon, it's far more detrimental to our health, because our body takes that energy in, and we also harbor that negative energy until the full moon. And when the full moon breaks, it's coming out like a waterfall. And this is why, for example, full moon is such a detrimental day, because if people didn't pay attention to what they absorbed in those 2 weeks, they're usually in a bad mood, or accident prone, or doesn't pay attention, or get easily angry. And then you have road rash and all sorts of things. And that's why police stations have double duty officers, and that's why hospitals have double duty doctors, because that's when you get all the stuff in, because nobody paid attention to their energy. And the other thing with full moon is that animals and people bleed more heavily on a full moon. And that's an old wisdom. For thousands of years, on a full moon, the last full moon before the animals in the barn had to be started to be fed with hay, and depending on the area, in October or November, depending on what the last month was, that was the full moon when all the animals got slaughtered that weren't fed through the winter, because they would bleed out better. And so the meat was easier stored. It had to be the full moon when it was already cold enough for cold storage. But that's the reason why it's called blood moon. The name blood moon has nothing to do with the color of the moon. That comes through smoke and fire and whatnot, all sorts of other things. But that was also, of course, a very important day, because it was what you could harvest was important, that you survived, your family survived. If you had something, it was a day to be grateful for. So it was usually a very important festival, a religious or spiritual festival on that same day, because it was such an important day. Winter was always the hardest time to get through and to get your family to survive. So a bit of gratitude and prayer for surviving the winter was in order, and that's why it was one of the bigger main festivals in any kind of culture, just about. It doesn't have to be just northern regions. Now, I call this calendar an ancient Celtic almanac, because that particular enormous amount of wisdom, of course, was around ever since humans walked the earth. You can't walk on earth and know about how to survive if you don't know the rhythms, if you're not in tune with your nature. But this particular amount of knowledge moved with the Celts through Europe, all the way through Northern Europe into Great Britain, and then from there it swapped over to here. And there is enough understanding about what the Celts did so that we can refer to some of their knowledge. What was before is not, got lost in time pretty much, or quite a bit anyways. So that's why I call it that, because the rhythm, the festivals, the fire festivals that are still celebrated in Great Britain and in Ireland are based on the Celtic traditions, and based on those natural rhythms, based on those natural festivities, until the Christian church took over and placed some of their holidays on top of those original holidays, and kind of didn't just add some of the saints to it, but took some things what got lost in the middle of control. So let's see here. So those are the basic rhythms: waning and waxing moon. The waning, the new moon is as much a transition point as the full moon, but it's not quite so violent. This is when we're transitioned from our activities level back to being more resting and taking more in, doing something good for ourselves. So one of the other rules, general rules, is that comes from the ancient times, from the Greek. Let's see if I put this in here. Maybe not. Yes, I did, I think. I can never remember the Greek philosopher that actually wrote about those roles. It was Hippocrates, 460 to 370 BC. He was known for talking a lot about those rhythms in all sorts of various forms. He talked about the influence of the moon rhythms on our physical body. So now the moon goes through the zodiac signs just like the sun goes through the zodiacs. Everybody knows their own zodiac sign. That's the sign where the sun was at the time of birth. You know, in front of which sign the sun was standing at your time of birth. So I'm Virgo, you're something else, whatever. That relates to that moment in time when we're born, in that particular place in time where we are on the globe, and where the sun was in the night sky was placed in front of which zodiac sign. For a long time, the zodiac signs have been associated with certain qualities, with certain characteristics, with certain temperaments and associations. And so we know some of it, but the moon also moves in front of the zodiac sign. So in the 28 days of a moon cycle, the moon moves through all 12 zodiac signs. And that is what the people could see in the night sky. When they were not reading and writing, but they were observing the nature, they could see where the moon was standing and if it was waxing or waning. And so over time, over thousands of years, the characteristics of those days became clearer and clearer and were able to be associated with those zodiac signs. So if you have a water sign, for example, Pisces, it's more likely that the air is moist and damp and things don't dry well. So if you want to dry your herbs, you don't use a Pisces day. Those were the knowledge how to use those days efficiently was valuable for survival. But it's also, and there's all sorts of different kinds of association with, and that's why those symbols are in the calendar. They all represent things that are favorable on that day. What's favorable to do on those days. And then you really need to read up on all those different, we'll go through a little bit of the signs, of the symbols, but that's why I put the legend in the back, because nobody can remember all of that. After so many years, I do mostly. But anyways, but it also relates to our back. The zodiac signs were associated with parts of our body. The symbol between, see, for example here, the symbol between the zodiac sign, in this case January is Sagittarius, and that's a fire sign. The symbol there is in this case is the ascending moon. And then you have other zodiac signs with the descending moon. So the rule is the ascending moon sign, so a symbol, associates with all the outer limbs of our body. So arms and legs and head, the skin, the outside of our body. And the descending signs are associated with the internal organs. That's the basic rule. 6 zodiac signs have an ascending moon, and 6 zodiac signs have a descending moon. And in the transition, the sign in the transition is kind of a limbo sign, goes both ways. I think it's Gemini and what's this one here?
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. So Gemini and Sagittarius are kind of tend to govern both sides a little bit. Let's see. This is this year's calendar. Let me get a next year's calendar. So we're on the same page here. So if we're staying with January 1st here for next year, it's a waning moon. It's just the day before a new moon in January. It's a Sagittarius day, meaning Sagittarius is the sign that stands behind the moon when you look at the sky that night, and Sagittarius is considered a fire sign. So fire signs are usually warm, and let's see, that's in the legend too. It explains. If I find the legend, then I may be able to read this. Here you got all your signs listed. And Sagittarius is the element fire. It's the color red. The body parts is thighs, veins, and sensory organs, which means all the nerve endings in that region. And the day quality is warm, focused on the future, bigger, better, joining together, and the stride lengthens. So it's a expansive day. It's something where we move forward, where we do things more broadly, where we're not starting to backpedal and hide. It's something that where we're excited about moving forward. When it comes to the organs that a sign governs, there was one major rule. Whatever you do good for the body part that is governed by the moon that day is especially positive. Whatever you do negative for that body part is especially negative. So if you're having, for example, with thighs and veins, if you're having really trouble in your legs, you wouldn't want to go on a 30-mile hike that day. Because that would really stress out that part of your body more than on any other day when it's not governed. And but if you go to a massage, that might be just the right thing for that organ. Sensory organs is all the nerve endings. So if we're having trouble with our nerve endings in general, then those days are where they're acting up more than on other days. It's not something. It's something to consider before we tackle heavy duty tasks. We can make it easier or harder on us with that. The other thing is, for example, one of the more important signs or more important things, for example, is Leo. Leo governs the heart. And if at all you can, if you have to have a heart surgery in front of you, don't put it on a Leo day. And don't put it just before or just after either, because any one of those signs governs about 12-24 hours before and 12-24 hours after. Of course, it fluctuates. Nothing, nature can't be put in a precise calendar that way. So, and they are actually starting to consider those things in Germany in many of the hospitals with major surgeries, because they found they have less trouble afterwards. They have less after the care, they have less trouble with the patients, and of course they have less trouble with the insurances later on. So it's a money saver. It's not necessarily that they're all woo-woo and gaga now, but they really found that it makes a difference in their budget and in their time and in their care and in their recovery rate. So they will, if they can, emergencies are emergencies, but if they can, they will plan the surgeries so that they don't fall on the signs. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Go ahead.
So if you're a Leo, your birthday is that's July.
Yeah.
So you don't have surgery.
That doesn't have anything to do with it.
Oh, it doesn't.
Your birth sign has more to do with the characteristics that you're born with the fiery nature of Leo, with Leo personality, with the personality that you're born with. Now there is a background to those kind of things too. Your birth date can be analyzed in where your preferences and your talents are when you're born. That was used that was used to calculate or to determine what the child was predestined for, whether it was more of an artist, whether it was more of the one that's going to run the ranch or the farm, whether it had what talents the child will have in the future, in order to assign the right kind of tendencies and jobs for him. If you had 10 children in the family, you didn't want to put the child in charge of the farm for 30 family members that doesn't have any inkling to do any of that. Mm-hmm. But maybe is somebody that plays the violin or plays the piano in the church. So they knew how to assess what the child came with. And then there's ways to add to that and change over lifetime. We add attributes to those given characteristics from the beginning. We learn, we change, we expand our horizon, and we can balance some of those things that were missing at the beginning that we didn't come with. That's a whole different subject. Okay. That goes into. So that's the biggest misconception when we talk about the moon zodiac. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your personal birth sign.
So you're saying every month has a Leo time.
Yes.
Okay.
Every month the moon goes through all 12 signs.
Okay.
And the first half of the year it goes. It's usually in the waxing or waning moon, and the other half a year that same sign is in the other sign, is the other half that shifts. So the moon, the Leo sign, isn't always in the waning moon. It's for about half a year it'll be showing up in the waning moon, and for half a year it'll show up in the waxing moon, with the transition time in between a little bit. So there is every sign throughout the year shows up with the variations of whether it's good for expanding energy or taking in energy. So if somebody has a weak heart, for example, the Leo days are especially favorable to do something that is really conducive to strengthening the heart.
So the Leo in January is a waning moon,
yeah.
Right? And in February, it's a waxing moon.
Is it? Could be.
I think, if I'm looking at it correctly. It's down on the left hand.
It's a full moon. There's a full moon. Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's just before the full moon. Yeah.
So, okay, so with the surgery example then, you would want to...
So say, for example, you need to have a heart surgery. Mm-hmm. The waning moon is usually preferable for any kind of invasive surgeries, basically because you get bombarded with chemicals, with anesthesia, and with other things, and the body has a much easier time expelling them during the waning moon than during the waxing moon, where it holds everything. So it doesn't hold the chemicals in the body. It will expel them far easier in the waning moon. So for any kind of invasive surgery, if possible, the waning moon, in general, the waning moon would be preferable. So if you have a heart surgery planned, or needs to be planned in January, for example, so the first 2 days, 18th and 19th after the full moon, would be the days where you don't want to put it. You never want to put a surgery on full moon, period, no matter what kind of a surgery, because of the bleeding issue on full moon. Not the day before and not the day after. If at all possible, avoid that full moon for any kind of physical stuff. So with Leo, if you have a heart surgery, anything after that, I would stay away for 2 or 3 days after that. So starting from the 22nd on, all the way through the 31st are suitable days for a heart surgery, if it has to be a heart surgery. So Libra governs the kidney and the hips and the bladder. So you have a bladder surgery, then that wouldn't be that day. If you have a bladder infection, in the waning moon, your body is more likely to expel those bacteria. So go to the doctor and get an antibiotic for the bladder infection. In the waning moon, it'll work about twice as fast as in the waxing moon, for example. Why are we more plagued with things like this during the waxing moon? Because the body holds on and expands the bacteria. So if we're prone to something like this, the waxing moon is a more prone time to catch something like that and be bothered by it than the waning moon when we're naturally expelling. We can, of course, with all we eat and with what we do and how much we drink, we can either further or hinder those things. So in the waning moon, if we drink a lot, we're expelled more. In the waxing moon, it's essential that we drink more so that the body is able to expel things like this. Far more essential than during the waning moon. Even though we do this naturally, of course, if we're working hard in the waning moon, we drink more. But it's people tend to forget to drink a lot in winter when they're not doing so much. And then in the waxing moon, this is when things accumulate in our body that shouldn't be there. And water is the element that flushes everything out. So it's really critical that we drink water. And I don't mean coffee, and I don't mean juice, and I don't mean sugar. I mean water. And the coffee pulls the minerals out of the body in great numbers. So that's coffee and chocolate and all these stimulants were used in ceremonies. And certain ceremonies during the year, 2-3 times a year, they weren't meant to be had every day on a regular basis.
Chocolate?
Yes. Yes. Chocolate is just like mushroom and coffee, a stimulant that's been used in sacred ceremonies. And a few other things. But I know it's hard, isn't it? Yeah. I don't like it either. But that's kind of what it says.
So here's a question with coffee. If you could drink coffee during a waxing moon or a waning moon for the rest of your life, which moon would you drink it?
If you have to drink it?
Yes.
If you have to drink it, you balance this with twice as much water.
Gotcha. And does it matter about the moons? Because you're uptaking and letting go. I'm wondering if it would be...
It's easier to quit a habit in the waning moon. If we need to quit some sort of a bad habit that we want to get rid of, the waning moon is easier.
Okay.
Yes, because we're easier to expel not just physical things, but also emotional and mental things. This is the other thing. We're not just a physical body. We are a much larger non-physical body than our physical body. The non-physical body is as big as our planet. That's why it says we're all connected. We're literally, on an energetic base, all connected. There's no such thing as running away from the other side of the planet just because we don't personally know their names. We are connected. That's why we can feel what's going on in the world. That's why everybody's uneasy when there's upheaval somewhere else, whether you heard the news or not. We are energetically connected. So keeping our energy body stable and clean and healthy and protected in the energy realm is critical for not absorbing everything that's floating around there. We're 8 billion people. You don't want to absorb everything that's going out there. And that's the thing. If we want to say, for example, any habit that we have that we're not in favor of, that doesn't serve us anymore. Doesn't matter what it is, from alcohol to drugs to food to certain habits that just don't serve us anymore, are easier to let go of in the waning moon. So if you start a diet, start it in the waning moon. It makes it easier. Do you have to have the determination and the self-love to actually go there? Yes. Is it simple? Yes. Is it easy? No. None of those things are easy. But they're doable. Not everybody is suitable for a diet. Most people don't want to lose things from our history, from our generation's history, from our memory of past lives. Losing things was not a happy thing. So we really mentally, subconsciously do not want to lose things. So it's really hard to give something up that we don't want to lose. Some people can, and most people cannot. And that's where the yo-yo effect comes in. If we rename it, and rename it in our mindset as letting go of, or dropping, or anything that isn't governed by the association with loss, then and if we tell ourselves that 27 times, the brain takes 27 times to overcome a habit, repetition, we are able to override our subconscious mind that is absolutely determined to hinder us on everything that calls change. Change in the old days, in the Stone Age, was something that was very dangerous. You know, you moved your location, you could be killed. You got out of the cave, there could be a bear. You ran into a fire, you could be dead. I mean, change was inherently dangerous to the life. So our brain is geared for warning us about change, any kind of change. Yet change is the only thing that's really evident everywhere. Energy cannot exist unless it changes. We would not exist if we didn't change all the time. The universe wouldn't exist without change. There's no such thing as perfection, because perfection is standing still, and standing still means death. It doesn't exist. Perfection does not exist. It cannot exist in the universe that is consistently moving and changing and altering. So embracing change, allowing change to happen, allowing spirit to take over when things happen in our life, and not go frantic and not go worry and not go panic, then we are able to see the next step. The minute we kind of go into panic mode, our brain shuts down and we go into survival mode. The body does and the brain does, and we're not going anywhere. The thing about panic mode and worry and things like this is that it really affects our body. Tremendously negatively affects our body, even though we may not notice it right away. But our aging process, our diseases, and our symptoms are mostly based on these kind of emotions. We've been feeding our body emotions like fear and panic and worry and stuff like that, and it's just a very negative creative event, and it gets our body acidic. And it's not so much the food. Yes, food has a little bit of an impact, but stress is about 70% of our physical well-being, not food, or not so much. I mean, we're eating a lot of junk food here in the States, so yes, it has an impact, of course, too. But the stress level, diminishing the stress level has a much more healing effect on our body than anything else. And nobody can do it for you. Not the pills, not the husband, not the neighbor. Nobody can do that for you. You have to be willing, you have to like yourself enough, love yourself enough to reduce your own stress level, and do whatever it takes to reduce your own personal stress level. And that's critical for healing, for anyone healing. Anyone in a hospital with patients, with cancer patients and stuff like that, will tell you that on our mindset determines whether people come out of it or not. It's not the mental thing. Nobody wants to have cancer. Nobody wants to die. That's a mental thing. Our ego goes into survival mode. So from a mental standpoint, of course, nobody wants to have symptoms or be sick or go do that. But on a soul level, you have people that enjoy life and want to move forward. And you have people that are done with life and are giving up and moving out. My grandfather was a doctor. He said, you cannot make a person want to live. There's no way. If they don't want to live, you can stand on your head. You can't heal them. Mm-hmm. And if they have the drive to live, you see miracles. But the drive doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the heart. It comes from the soul. It comes from our enjoyment in life in general. Not the circumstances and not the hiccups and not the things that happen. It comes from the innate joy of being here and living, being allowed to be here and moving forward in our evolution. And that is the key part. So whatever we can do to reduce our stress by allowing ourselves to make our life easier is very beneficial for the whole being of us, for the whole process of going through life and And the other thing is that we're not responsible for anybody else except children under the age of 18. We agreed to host those children. When we raise them, we agreed to help them get through adulthood. And then from that moment on, they're on their own, just like we were on our own. The soul takes over. The soul is as old as anybody's soul. There's no new and old souls. We're all been created at the same time. Whether we have none of us has the same experiences going from lifetime to lifetime. So there is we have variances there as we choose that. But no one is responsible for any other being in general. But the only thing that guarantees compassion is if we have compassion and love for ourselves, then we can give it out to somebody else. If we're hating ourselves, we're unable to love somebody else. We cannot love another person more than we love ourselves. And you see this everywhere. You see it everywhere, unfortunately. And so it's not about carrying another person. It's about caring for self so well enough that we give an example of how to be well. That's the gift that we give to children. After they're adults. Not how much we worry. Because that drives kids to the end of the earth. Because the worry is an energy that we feel. You send worry to someone, they feel it. They may not be able to put it in words, but they feel it. You send them love and joy, they feel that too. And I think that's a much better gift that we can give to anyone. Whether they have trouble or not, we all have trouble. There's no exception. Anyway, so these little rules here in this book, those little things here, help us with our everyday life. And that makes our stress level less. So, for example, you see when you look at the symbols in the calendar, during the waning moon, there's a lot more symbols there than during the waxing moon. Because we're so much more active in that time. We can do so many more things. So, for example, Virgo days are the most active, physically active days. That's where we really are able and willing and happy to do some physical things. So if you want to start a yard sale, start it on a Virgo day during the waning moon. Now, there's another symbol just here in January. There is the symbol of Mercury Retrograde starting on the 15th. And I put Mercury Retrograde in there because it's one of those essential astrological events that really impact our everyday life. More than any other, whether we know them or not, we can feel them. But Mercury Retrograde is known as nothing really works out. And here's the rule to that. Mercury supports anything that needs finishing. Finishing up something that you've been postponing, finishing up cleaning up the garage, cleaning up your life, finishing up relationships, finishing up a job, everything that has been on the long haul for a finishing touch, Mercury will support. Mercury retrograde does not support anything new. Starting a new job, trying to close on a house, starting a whole new whatever life event, something brand new, going on a vacation you've never gone to. For example, during Mercury retrograde, you will run into all sorts of obstacles. If realtors would pay attention, they could tell you when Mercury retrograde affects them because they can't close a single thing in that time. It just gets postponed. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work out. The appointments don't come together. People don't come together. It just is lagging the motion forward. If you go to a job interview, I'd prefer if it wasn't in retrograde. Sometimes you can't help it, but then if you understand the energy, you can base your interview on that. So I wouldn't tell the new boss all the new things I wanted to change in his life on that day. That just doesn't go over too well. I would harp more on the things that person thinks is overdue doing. Just that supports that energy. So knowing a few of those things can be actually very helpful in many ways.
So is that like one day?
No, it's everywhere that you see the sign. It's usually for quite a while. So in January, it starts on the 15th. Okay. And I put the sign everywhere where it is. Mm-hmm. And then it ends, and it says it too on the 5th of February. Mercury retrograde happens about 3 times, sometimes 3.5 times a year, depending on where it fits. It's and astrology can tell you what that means. It just means that the planet seems to stand still and go reverse when you watch the night sky. How that happens technically is some physical phenomenon, which I'm not capable of explaining that expertly. It's pretty simple to explain, but all planets go retrograde at some point or other during the year. Retrograde planets, every planet has their associations with characteristics and with things that are favored and not favored. And in retrograde, it's usually the opposite. It's stalling that effect. It's holding back this effect. So we had a time just recently where we had several planets in retrograde, and it kind of emphasizes all the things bubble to the surface that are in stalling mode, that are just not moving right, that are not moving forward on the political scale, on the global scale, on a personal scale. Those days, don't chastise yourself over not making as much stride as on other days or at other times. It's just not favored. And we don't want to see it, but we're very influenced by all those energies. And we're subconsciously working with or against them. And we feel the against them part as being that our physical body gives us symptoms and we're not in the mood and we're not, this just doesn't work out properly, and the phone calls come in that agitate us, just the dot on the I for that day, just need something else, and all these kind of things. So if we know that this energy is about, we can counter that by doing some nice things for us, doing something favorable, go out with a friend and have a cup of coffee or that hot chocolate, for example. Don't try to make a new contract on a Mercury retrograde day. Just take it easy till it's over, and then it works much better.
Looks like it ends in February.
Yeah.
And February 5th.
Yeah, it starts up
in May.
Oh, in May. Yeah.
Yeah, and it like a lot of days in May and into June.
Yep, the coming May is it ends in the 2nd of June. Yeah. And it's so there's one more thing a few more things that I want to talk here about this calendar, what's in the calendar. One thing, there's an energetic transition from when the moon moves from one sign to the next sign, and it's called void of course moon. And somebody studied that for half their life to figure out, and it's a certain rule. What means here? The time from the last significant aspect in each sign until the moon enters the next sign. It is the time to reflect rather than engage in mental or physical activities. Between walk times, activities and physical sensory qualities of the current sign dominate. So I put those signs in, and only a very few are actually during the daytime, where, when you have a really, really important business meeting planned, make sure it's not happen accidentally in the walk time, because it really isn't favored for activity. People are going to sleep on your desk. They're not moving forward. They're not participating. They're not mentally active in that time, because it's a time more to reflect of what happened the last 2-3 days. It's a very minor effect, but if it's really something very important, I would look at the walk time for meetings and stuff like that. Most of them happen during the nighttime anyways, and so this is when we reflect anyways. But there are a few that are in the middle of the day, and but it's just very lightly. But I found it interesting that even, yes, the times and the rhythms fluctuate from waning to waxing moon, and then we have an intensive transition. And when the moon moves from one sign to the next, we have sort of kind of a pause period in between for the activity levels of the energy. Because everything, just about really everything in nature goes in rhythms, and it has ups and downs and highs and lows, and in between lower, flatter times. So I was going to go from here to you picking a day, just any day from the calendar, and we'll talk about reading that day. What do you read on that day? What do the symbols mean? Where do you go with when you hit a certain day? So just kind of whatever, pick any day you want. It doesn't matter to me.
Might as well pick your birthday.
Pick your birthday. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about that day. What about your birthday?
March 8th.
March 8th.
So let's take a look at that.
March 8th.
Oh, it's a pretty boring day.
No, it's not a boring day. It's just not a very active day. It's actually a really good day for being a birthday. So it's a waxing moon. So it's when we're taking in. And let me open this here so I can cheat about the symbols. Gemini is the transitional sign from internal to external, so it governs not just the internal organs. In this case, Gemini governs the shoulders, the arms, and the hands, but it also governs a little bit what's going on in that region. So it's the lungs are a little bit involved in that. Gemini is an air day, or considered an air day. In Gemini days, when somebody has trouble with the light intensity, those are the days when people need sunglasses. Because even if it's cloudy, the light seems to be more intense on those days than on any other day. That's the thing. And air days, when the air moves our thoughts, air moves the other elements around. It tears on our body. Air, when there's a storm, when there's wind up there, that was always very dangerous times when you're outdoors, because you couldn't hear the predators. That's when all the animals are scared and frightened, because they naturally can't be as alert as they could be on other days. And we are too. So in order to stabilize the reduction of that stress, we're prone to look for fatty food. And if we have trouble with certain fats, those are the days where we better pay attention to what kind of fat we're ingesting. So it's very easy to grab the bag of chips just because, but then it may be just the wrong kind of fat. Okay, so whatever where we have to pay attention to us, this indicates what we. So if somebody has heart issues, for example, on those earth days like Taurus, like just above there, there are cool days by nature, cool, whether it's 100 degrees or not, those days feel cooler. They're cooler on our skin, and our bodies crave salt to balance that coolness, that reduction of heat. So if we have heart problems, we need to pay attention to our salt intake. Those are the days where we have to pay attention to that more, because we're prone to just grab it. So 8th, the Gemini day. It's also, the walk time is from 7 a.m. to 11:40 a.m. So you don't want to have a really important meeting in the morning of that day. But it favors, it's a flower day. Now, those are the days when you pick flowers, when you buy flowers, the energy is from the plant. Naturally, the energy is more in the flower of the plant than in the leaves or in the roots. And that has an impact. So when you want to pick flowers for your vase, flower days are especially good because the energy is in the flower, and the flower will hold its beauty a little longer. If you pick a day where it's in the roots, then you don't pick the roots. So the rest of the plant has less energy on that day. the little face in there means that these Gemini, these days are especially good for beauty stuff, for doing something really nice for you, like getting a face pack or a mask, or going to a cosmetician, or getting a massage and stuff like that. Something that is really soothing for you. So what's what I'm saying, you have to stay on your birthday. Just make it a really cool day for yourself, you know, not, and I don't mean working, I mean doing something really nice for yourself. Gemini days are bread baking days, where the yeast dough rises better than on any other day. So when I try a new recipe and I don't really have a clue, or I haven't been baking forever, and I don't want to fail because I have 10 people coming, and then Gemini days are really, or Earth air days are really, really good for baking. And there's a little bit of a different rule to it. Yeast and bread dough rises quickest on flower days during the waning moon. Sourdough and biscuits and cakes bring better results during the waxing moon. So it's more like the sourdough and biscuits and that work well on those days. So when you plan a very special meal for somebody, or you invite the whole family, and you really want to look at the calendar, because it can tell you what might work out better than other things for your dinner meal, for especially for the baking stuff. That's usually when my things kind of fall apart. You know? It tastes good, don't look at it. Kind of thing. Yeah. So that's this day, and there isn't much else that to do, because it's in the waxing moon time, other than taking care of yourself, and it's favored on that day. So you know, the money spent on a real good face mask is especially valuable on that day.
Okay.
Sounds good?
Yep.
These samples in here talk about other things that didn't really fit into the calendar for that much here. Massage and energy healing and foot relax, zone therapy to release tension and pain, choose the waning moon, you know, letting go of things. Again, that's the rule. To regenerate and strengthen, choose the waxing moon. So that's the general rule, and it can apply to just about anything, even though it didn't fit into a rhythm associated with a zodiac sign. Supplemental treatments to encourage tissue healing and new healthy growth. Treatments are more effective during the waxing moon. Again, because we're adding to the body. If we need to detox, the waning moon is the better time to detox. Dentist, and that's something they're doing in Germany now too, that the dentist paying attention to that. Plan your appointments during the waning moon around, avoid Aries and Taurus, because Aries and Taurus govern the head. Aries governs the top of the head, and Taurus governs the lower part of the head. So anything teeth, upper and lower, those two signs are not very favorable for any kind of treatments. Whatever kind of treatments, because whatever you do in the mouth is usually invasive in one shape or form. And let's see here. But on the other hand, except molds, if you need dentures and you get a mold done, they turn out better during the waxing moon. Again, because the body is filled, your gums are filled, and the mold will fit better afterwards than during, because our tissue changes and expands and it distracts too during the different times. So molds will fit better afterwards if it's done during the waxing moon. Just little things that can make life less stressful and less hikes to the dentist and stuff like that. Cleaning and all the things that we don't really like to do, you know. Sewing new lawns, you know, there's better and worse days when it comes better forward and stuff like that. Now there's one thing that just recently it's really obvious, and not even gardeners know about it. It's about pruning and cutting trees. When you prune diseased trees, or trees that need a little bit of help, or shrubs that need a little bit of help, the new moon is the best day, by far the best day. You can bring a very sick tree or shrub back to life by pruning it pretty rigorously on a new moon. If you do the same thing on a full moon, it's you're killing it. And here's her example. There was from this area here. This year in April 27th, we had a very deep freeze, very late in the season. The sap was already rising so far. And our greenhouse operator in Castor lost almost 300 trees that day. And they all died from where the sap was at the day. From there up, everything was dead. And it because it was just hours after full moon. And it happened in 72. I remember there was a hailstorm in Munich, and it didn't just kill tens of thousands of cars, but it killed also all the evergreen trees all around the town, because that hail chopped off the tops of the trees, and it was on a full moon. And they called it tree death or whatever, or forest death, but simply the entire area that was hailed on, all the trees died from the top down. So that, if you have your fruit trees and things like that you wanna prune them on a new moon, your results are going to be way better than on any other day. Those are little things that they still need to be done, and but it helps with the effort, because these rules weren't invented. They came in handy because work was hard and life was hard anyways. Everything was physical and everything was hard, and if you didn't plant and harvest right, the whole entire family suffered. There wasn't a grocery store to go to, and fix it. Thanks for grocery stores these days. But anyway, fence posts, you have a really hard ground, you have rocks underneath, and you have a heck of a time putting fence posts in. Put them in on the right day, they have a much better chance staying upright than on any other day. And those are little things. They used in the mountains, they used to cut the logs according to certain days. There was a lot of rules about when to cut wood, when to cut firewood, and that's listed in the calendar too. There's the waning moon in the first 3 months of the year. When you cut live trees for later firewood, those are the days to cut the firewood. From the solstice on all the way through March and the waning moon. These trees, and if you put the tip of the tree downhill and leave them there for a while before you chop them up and bring them in, these trees will make great firewood that bring heat to it and dry it better. You cut them in the wrong time, they may not dry up, they may just not bring any heat, they may just not be for good firewood. But they had days for when to cut wood that would never burn. There's a lot of houses, especially in the Alpine mountains, that burned several times, and the interior may have burned, but the house structure is still standing as it was just newly built. You take the soot off, and it's just, the logs are just as healthy and well as before. They didn't burn. They were cut on a day where wood doesn't burn. They were cutting wood on certain days to build bridges because the wood wouldn't get slippery, and things like that. It's just like with the natives in Alaska with 1,000 different variations of ice. The people in the mountains with forest knew everything about forest because that was their source of livelihood. Weaning calves, for example, that's one of those things that in the Alpine mountains was very important, because they drove the cows up into the mountains, and they didn't have fences, and they didn't have trailers and lead ropes. The cows would have to go willingly up the mountain. So weaning calves around full moon was a much easier feat than weaning them on any other day, because the cows would actually like to separate. Cows wanted to go get grass, and the calves were done with mommies. In spring, they didn't wean them in fall. They didn't wean them. They weaned them when they drove the cows back out in the mountains, and then they had the calves up on top there. So the calves were about almost a year old before they got weaned, and the weaning process is so much easier anyways. And the same with bringing them back down. The cows had to be ready to come down from the mountain into the barn and not be forced, because there wasn't any way to force them. So it had to be the right day for them to come back down. Things like that made life easier. It explains certain things, and I know a lot of horse breeders that absolutely have no idea about that, and they struggle with those things. If they would just choose the right day, they would have about, almost no trouble at all with those things. Stress affects the animals too. So if you put an animal under stress, of course it's more prone to get sick. So, and if you can do this stress-free, it's so much better for the animal. Let's pick another day. Want to pick another day? Something very different? What's your birthday?
July 29th.
July 29th.
I was going to try to pick a day in October for weaning calves.
Oh?
But we can do that later, maybe, after.
Well, October, let's see. This is this year you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is 22.
Because
that's
this is 22. Let's see, in October. So the full moon in October is on the 20th. So starting, I don't know how long you wean if you do this, and retrograde ends on the 18th. So between the 18th and the full moon on the 20th would be good days to wean. If they can have a wall between them before they totally separated, those would be the days. And then on that full moon is at 8:56 a.m. So the energy is shifting right after that. So from 9 o'clock in the morning on, you won't have any trouble separating the cows from the calves.
Anywhere from the 18th to the 20th then.
Yeah.
Okay.
18th. I wouldn't separate him before the 20th. The
Okay.
final separation.
Okay.
But if you start separating, kind of like half the calves are in the barn and the cows are outside, so that they can still talk to each other for a day or so, that helps if it's possible. Not everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know how everybody does that. But the 20th, anything from 9 o'clock on will work in your favor. Will work in your favor.
That's about when they come off pasture. Anyway, 15th maybe. 15th. But that's... Yeah, okay.
That is still, that is, and it's in retrograde. In this year's calendar, I didn't put the symbols on every day. I did this in this new one. But yes, this is finishing up. This is closing a cycle. So that fits into that time, all retrograde. Whether that fits into that, what you have to do with fall, summer, and spring, that's a little different, because you can't always look for a retrograde thing when the weather changes. That has other roles. Now, so we'll talk about a little bit about the different symbols. So, for example, here in the Black Hills, I found that it rains predominantly on Earth days. It's just one of those things. Water days, like Pisces and Scorpio days and stuff like that, are more damp. So if you really have something that you want to get drying that day, it's a little harder than the other days. The laundry dries longer. It takes longer to dry, if it even gets totally dry. And it doesn't matter whether the sun shines or not. It's the air moisture. Earth days are more cool, and it seems like in the last few years that it predominantly rains on those days here in the hills. You can, whether the Weather Channel announces it or not, that's just what it does. Fire days are usually warmer days, so when they announce heavy thunderstorms and rain, yes, occasional, but very rarely does it actually really happen. It's the atmosphere may be stormy, but whether it hits the ground or not is very unlikely. And then air days are important to understand, because they're really, when air is moving, wind is one of those forces that create stress in people. And of course, if you have tornadoes and things going through on air days, they're especially violent and especially prone for injuries and things like that. So air days are a little bit emotionally volatile, say it this way. The most volatile from the star signs, the most emotional from the star signs is Pisces. Pisces governs our feet. we take energy in from the earth and we release energy into the earth through our feet. Pisces days, that's why they're, and if we're holding energy in our body, emotions in our body, those are the days holding energy, holding negative emotions in our body is the number one cause for cancer, nothing else. It just hardens if we don't release them, if we don't let go. One of the things that releases emotions is crying, and we've been taught for generations that crying isn't okay, and crying is the number one healthy source for releasing unwanted toxic emotions. Don't ever tell any kid not to cry, because it's really a natural cleansing process. The other thing on Pisces days, what works really well is foot baths. To detox on those days helps much more than on any other day. Doing a relaxing and detoxing foot bath on those days flushes out a lot of the stuff that shouldn't be in our body. And don't be embarrassed when the water gets dirty, even though you had really clean feet, because what comes out of your body will show in the water.
That's Pisces days?
Pisces. Pisces days. So let's go to July. What was it, July?
July 29th.
29th. So next year, July 29th is the day after New Moon. So New Moon is the time when we release things. That's the culmination of releasing all sorts of things in our active time. And this is when our body transitions into starting to take in. It's on a Leo day, which is governs the heart and the back and the circulation. Leo days aren't good for anything much at all, except for going to the hairdresser. Seriously. And in the old German calendar, she always had also the counter sign. I just have the signs in for things that are favorable, but she also had the signs in for things that are absolutely unfavorable on certain days. And I remember in Germany when I grew up, there were certain days when the hairdressers were closed, and they seemed to be absolutely random. And they weren't according to the knowledge, because people knew that those days would not be favorable to go to the hairdresser, because the cut wouldn't work out and the perm wouldn't work out and all these kind of things. And so the hairdressers didn't even open. Now that changed once I got to college, because the knowledge was going away and it was 9 to 5 and the rules applied more. But in the very beginning, I remember that the hairdresser was randomly closed, and it was because of those calendars. And I didn't have a clue. My mom didn't have a clue. So we just, you'd stand in front of the door and the door was closed. So, but that's in the old days, they knew that.
What's protein? And there's some that say carbohydrate.
We're favoring protein on warm days, where our body's craving protein more than anything on really warm days. And July is usually very warm. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. There was something in here about hair. Where is my symbol for hair? Hair cutting. In Leo or Virgo, in waxing moon, hair will grow faster. No, cutting hair. In Leo or Virgo, in waxing moon, the hair will grow faster. Cutting in waning moon, it will grow slower but thicker. Do not wash your hair. In Pisces. Well, Pisces is, that has other things, but Pisces are the days where the air is damp and where it doesn't dry, and so the chance that you run around with a wet head is or wet skin is kind of probably the reason for Pisces, or one of the reasons. But anyways, yeah, Leo is a good time to go to the hairdresser. It's a fruit day. Warm days are fruit days, so those are the days when you pick planting and harvesting days for fruit. What is considered the fruit of the plant. The energy is in the fruit, and that's when you plant them. When you want especially good fruit, and that's all you're going to harvest them. Leo days aren't suitable for going shopping. There's other days that are more suitable for going shopping to get produce, to get fresh fruit, like Aries days, when there's a symbol there for the fruit, for harvesting, and also for going shopping. Because there's one more rule to all those things. The moment of touch is the important moment for the energy that's in there. It's kind of like the same with storing potatoes. There are certain days when you store your potatoes in cool storage where the potatoes will last longer and don't go moldy and don't start sprouting and all these kind of things if it's done on the right day. And that's all it takes, just the right day. And you can try it out. Everybody that ever made jam knows that sometimes you can do your very best and it still goes moldy, and it's just because it's done on the wrong day. There are days that are absolutely suitable for canning, and you can do your worst job and it won't go moldy. That's for idiots like me who don't do it all the time. So these things are helpful. These most of these things were written down or were gathered up in family knowledge just because they were just simply helpful and necessary. So your Leo day. So that's about all you can do here on Leo day. You take care of your heart. You take care, you have a really good meal with more protein than carbohydrates because that's what your body craves. Go for dinner. If you feel like it, go to the hairdresser on that day. Kind of really indulge yourself for something new or something fun. Other than that, Leo days are days where we take it as easy on all sorts of other activities. So don't plan your 30-mile hike on that day. Do something that is not physically strenuous because you won't be in the mood for it. Another day. You want another day? What's your day? What's your day?
November 9th.
November 9th. Well, we're not there yet, so we can go into this year. This year. November 9th. November 9th falls into Capricorn. It's a waxing moon too, and it falls on a Capricorn day, on an Earth day. Now in November it hardly ever rains. It snows, so it might snow on that day.
It has snowed a lot on my birthday.
Yeah, well, it's not always on a Capricorn day, but it is in this case. It very well may snow, so just make preparations for a snowy day. For a snowy day, it governs the bones, the joints, and the skin. So, and the whole bone system. So, especially people notice it with joints that need to bend, like knees and elbows and ankles and the neck. And all those joints, things that need to be flexible, those are the things that are, we need to do something good for on that day and not something stressful. Joints in our body reflect our flexibility towards life. When we are starting to get stiff and unflexible and unbendable and don't want to change anymore, our joints start to hurt. And the body always represents where we're resisting the flow of change. And until we kind of let go of that too. So do something nice and favorable for your bones and for your skin that day. Capricorn also has another thing, and that goes together with skin and bones, is it's the best day for nail care. Fingernails, toenails. If you grant yourself a manicure or a pedicure that day, that is especially favored on Capricorn days. In this case, Capricorn is also a day for that's a symbol for harvesting, not just harvesting outside, but harvesting, getting fruit and vegetables in the store, or even buying any kind of groceries, meat and stuff like that too is favored on Capricorn days. It's a cool day. It craves salt. Most things stay better on cooler days anyways. Now it doesn't mean freezing them down, but it's kind of interesting. Jack is somebody that eats bananas all the time, and I for a year, I took note on which days I bought bananas, and I tried to take them always in the same ripeness for that time, and I was making notes on how long they lasted and not. And it was interesting that on days that were favored for going shopping and touching fruit, those would last at least 3 or 4 days longer than on days where it wasn't favored. And yes, you can they were not all the same, or they were not as ripe, or what at all. I was you can't make it really scientific, but it was pretty obvious that on those days the fruit would last longer. It wouldn't go moldy, and you didn't have stuff in the refrigerator that you didn't want there and stuff like that. So it doesn't mean that you don't eat them, but it gives you more time. If you buy enough to have to do something, freeze them or cook them or prepare them or get them somewhere, you give yourself a little extra time for that job, rather than buying something on a day where you have to do it that day. That's the thing. It's you don't have to go look at your calendar to go shopping, but it sometimes if you have a big project ahead of you, or you're buying the crate of something and have to process it might be handy to pick them on their better day, even though that same crate was on the pickup from that dealer that the day before. It still makes a difference. It's the moment of touch. It's the energy moment of when we put the energy into that purchase, into that. We are far more energy than doing. Doing is just an outpouring of something, but the energy we put, the intentions we put into something is very effective. And we usually disregard that kind of a thing. People don't, and that's the other thing. It's just like when we read and eat at the same time, we don't even realize what we're eating. And we're not enjoying it, we're not digesting it well, and we're doing ourselves a disservice, our body, when we don't concentrate on the thing that we're doing. So if you read, you read. Don't eat while you read. If you eat, you eat. Don't do anything else in between. And the darn cell phone everywhere is the one number thing why, why there's no conversation, why there's no togetherness, and why people have trouble digesting what they eat, if they even remember what they ate while they were on the cell phone. It's detrimental to our physical body. Our physical body is a Stone Age body. It's not meant to do all those things at the same time. There's one more sign in the calendar. I need to mention that. What time is it? I don't know. Anyways, there was one more thing in there that is kind of important for people that travel and go on vacation. The teacher star, the dog star, Sirius, is rising on July 23rd. And it's usually setting in the sky on September 23rd. And it was always known the energy that comes from Sirius in that time is especially intense. And it's the teaching star. So we are affected. And it shows if we're resisting the effect of those spiritual teachings in that time, because it's subconscious, that we're very emotional. People are very emotional in that time. And it's usually also the time when people are traveling on the road. So we need to be more cautious in that time, because not everybody is in a good mood. Not everybody is paying attention. So Saint Germain said last year that from last year on, since the Aquarian age, this last Aquarian age is fully in place now, that the energy from Sirius does not shut down anymore. We're consistently streamed that teaching energy, that energy that helps us in our evolutionary process to move forward, is now continuous. So there is no shutting down anymore and relaxing after September 23rd. School done. No, school's not done. It gets intensified now. And the changes are upon us, and the easier we go with it, the easier we flow from moment to moment, from day to day, the easier we're going to walk through this whole thing, no matter what life presents to us. We're not taking anything along anyways, are we? We come with nothing, we go with nothing, and the less stress we have in between, the better we remember the days that were beautiful. And the more stress we make ourselves, the less likely we consider our life as worthy. But the only thing that keeps us alive is that we enjoy it. Is really, there's love and joy is the only thing that moves us forward in a healthy body. And worrying over other people and other things isn't helping them one tiny bit, and it is definitely detrimental to our own physical health, and we're not setting a good example on top of that. So just let that whole thing fall off your shoulders. You do not, you have not, you cannot carry another person, no matter who. You can care for another person, but you can't carry it. And that is at times helpful, because then this whole guilt trip, should oughta gotta do master, and should have done something, or could have done, this is just not true. We are in the right place at the right timing, and we are given the opportunity to do what we can. And if we're not at the right timing, then it wasn't for us to do it. We're letting go of all those ifs and buts and could, should, do, all that kind of thing. Helps a lot. Even out the things. We live way too much in the guilt trips. Way too much. It ruins not just our life, it ruins everybody else's too. Questions?
This is in a mountain time zone.
Yes.
I live in central time zone.
Yeah. Central time is, as far as I know, 1 hour plus.
Yes. So like right now, if it's 5 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock there.
So here I listed in this new calendar, I listed underneath your mountain time, Central time plus 1 hour, Eastern time plus 2 hours, and Pacific time plus 1 hour. No, minus 1 hour.
Yeah.
So when there is a specific time, like for the moon and for solstices and solar eclipses and all that kind of thing, then you can translate that, the sentences underneath there.
Okay.
And and it's printed on every page, and it's on every page in these calendars here too.
What is the difference between the small calendar and the big calendar?
The big calendar, as a wall calendar, the difference is only that the wall calendar has pictures and has those extra little explanations, what those different things is. Because Sirius, for example, is explained here, or Lunarsad, Celtic holidays, wherever I had room for an extra day, I put some things in from Mabon and what those old things meant, or Michaelmas and whatnot. All the legends are the same, the explanations are the same. All the extra information that is not in the calendar is listed in the pocket calendar the same way, just on a in front on the page. And the pocket calendar has a lot more space to write things in.
Okay.
And that's why I'm always printing both, because I keep this one in my purse all the time for reference and for my personal notebook. I have yet to emerge to making a calendar out of my phone. I'm behind on that one. And the wall calendar is just nice and easy to have on the walls, and I hang them into my cabins too. I get quite a few questions from people what that thing is. And even though my husband triggered me writing the calendars in English, he has yet to look at them. But he's very in tune with nature anyways. So we get this, after a while, you don't look at your calendar before, you look at your calendar after. When you were really antsy and you really wanted to go shopping that day, and for some reason, logically you don't really have to, but you really want to, and you look at your calendar afterwards, it was usually because it was favorite that day. Or when he goes out and waters his trees, and he's getting all, I gotta water. It's because he can feel the stress in the trees, and when he afterwards looks at the calendar, it's usually a favorable day. Stuff like that. So most of the things, the aha moments for me came looking at the calendar afterwards, because we don't always look before when we're not growing up with that. It's kind of an extra thing. But I do look at it if I really plan something that I haven't planned before, I haven't done before, something I'm not really sure about.
I'll look at the calendar and see if that's really actually favored or whether I'm writing myself into some misery there. I do my skin creams and my flower essences according to the calendar. I'll make the skin creams always on flower days because the energy is heightened then in the production of things like that. I made all the flower essences when I made them, and I went out to collect flowers for those. I went on flower days, and that's why the process of collecting so many flowers in the Black Hills was a 5-year process, because they had to be blooming and it had to be the right day, and in order to extract the essence and bind it or energetically bind it to water, it had to be sunshine. Sunshine is the catalyst for getting the plant to release the essence of its character and bind it to water. So it didn't always happen right away, and you can only produce so many a day. And so it took me 5 years to collect all those 80 different essences. And then now they store, and I use homeopathic alkaline water for that, so there's no chemicals in it and it doesn't need it. The formula also came from Saint Germain, from a naturally alkaline water here in the Black Hills, which is very helpful, and can be purchased in Rapid City, Willard's water, and diluted. You drink 2 to 4 glasses a day. You stabilize the pH in your body. You reduce the stress level in your entire body, and over time your body can flush out all the toxins. And it's what saved my life after the cancer. It was the water. And then in a homeopathic formula, it's so diluted that there isn't anything physical in there anymore, but the water is crystal clear for as long as you need it. Doesn't matter. I got bottles that are 10 years old and they're absolutely crystal clear. And if you ever known anything about water and sterility, it's almost impossible to do that. But this water helps, and so I can produce stuff that doesn't have any preservatives in it, no chemicals. I have a lot of clients that cannot have any alcohol because that's part of what they're working on, and so that was my goal for a long time, to create skin products that do not have chemicals in them, that are counterproductive to all the stuff that should be in there. Things like that. Are we wrapping it up long enough? If you have any questions once you start working with it and looking at it, this is when we look at the calendar and it's not really listed in there, and then all of a sudden we're not really clear on how to choose the right days. For example, a friend of mine called me up in January once, and she said, I got your calendar and I'm still trying to figure out when to castrate our colt. And I can't figure it out from your calendar when there would be a good day for that. And I would like to do this in the next couple of weeks. And I said, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the calendar. You don't do that in January when it's cold. You don't lock somebody with a fresh wound up in the stall where the infection can set in. You do that when there's no flies, before the flies fly, after spring, so you can let them out so they can move around and expel the stuff. And then you do it in the waning moon so that the body can let go of all the so that the wounds heal up and don't hold anything in from the chemicals or from the surgery and any dirt or whatever, so it can release it. So I says, to your question, choose the waning moon, choose an internal organ day that is not in that area. So you don't choose, let's see, what's closest to that. I think it's Scorpio. Scorpio is, governs the sexual organs. So you definitely avoid the Scorpio days for something, for a surgery like that. And choose any other day that in the waning moon. And if your veterinarian doesn't believe in it, just don't tell him. Tell him you don't have time. You don't need to explain it. Yeah. But another example that I had with my mother about those surgery things, she had she needed stents in her artery, in her veins, in her legs, because due to smoking she had very bad circulation in her veins, and she's been on heart medication and kidney medication for decades. So the doctor picked a day that the first day for the first surgery was exactly in that region between the hip and the thighs, and I says, Mom, this is the wrong day. Just pick another day. Oh, I can't tell that to my doctor. I says, you don't have to, just pick another day. Of course she didn't, because she didn't believe that. And when I asked her afterwards how the surgery went, oh, she said, I was so much in pain. It took 2 weeks and it didn't really heal, and it was gruesome, and it was just horrible. Okay, what do you say? Okay. So then she had the other side planned, scheduled for surgery, and the doctor picked the heart day. Now, her heart is so weak that wasn't very recommendable either. I says, Mom, this is a really difficult day for your heart. Well, I can't change that. So I called her afterwards. She's in Germany. How did the surgery go? Oh, yeah, they had me in there early in the morning, and then they let me sit there, and I didn't get anything to drink and to eat. And then they carted me in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I collapsed before they even started. Surgery didn't go through. You know, so it's not just rigorous that. So if somebody has a real trouble issue, you consider that trouble, you consider that organ, you know, in the approach of something like this, of course. But what do, you know? But this is when you can if you can plan it, and you don't have to tell the doctor why. Just tell them you don't have time. Pick another day. If they're not ready to hear it. But there's more and more that are coming around. And in Germany, obviously, there's clinics that are really coming around because they figured out it would save them money. For no other reason than that. Anyways, let's wrap this up. As an introduction, I think that was enough. Do you have a question?
Where can they get a hold of you or get a hold of a calendar?
Okay. Yes, very good question. Through me on Facebook. I got my personal site. I got a website, Ancient Almanac calendars, on where it's listed in the shop on Facebook. It's also listed on Etsy in my shop, Black Hills Flower Essences, or BH Flower Essences, and then directly the calendars themselves have phone numbers and emails on them. You're very welcome to ask me anytime about when questions come up. Does that make sense?
That's it.
Are
we good?
Yeah, for everything that I forgot about. We'll talk about it.
I think you remembered a lot of it.
So I'm going to hit, there's a finish button. I'm going to hit finish, and then I'm going to look for save, okay?